I've noticed that any male that has anger is a woman because he's become like his mother, taking on her identity. And in relationships, they are not able to help the woman overcome their anger because they have her identity. You become like whomever you're angry at. And because we were born through the woman, and the woman hate the father of the children or hate her mother and father, she turned the kids away from the father and they become emotional like her.
Alright, check this out. We have two like-minded men when it comes to God and family. One being Jesse Lee Peterson and the other being a pastor by the name of Geno Jennings. Now, in this video, we have Jesse Lee and Pastor Geno Jennings engaged in a very meaningful debate on the lack of a father presence has single women raising emotional men. So before I play the rest of this video, like, comment, share. With that, just remember, ain't no fee, thinking is free. Now subscribe to the Gamma Degree.
I'm married and my wife and I have 7 kids.
That's amazing. That's the way it should be. Are you the head of your wife?
Oh, yes.
You're the head of your wife. I haven't met a man in a long time who just said, oh, yes, I'm the head of my wife. Especially pastors.
Yes, sir.
So that's good to know. But I noticed that when God speaks of anger, his anger is discernment. It's not like human beings' anger. I've noticed that any male that has anger is a woman because he's become like his mother, taking on her identity. And in relationships, they are not able to help the woman overcome their anger because they have her identity. You become like whomever you're angry at. And because we were born through the woman, and the woman hate the father of the children or hate her mother and father, she turned the kids away from the father and they become emotional like her. And that's where that anger comes from. And it's not normal for men to have anger, being logical, when women are illogical. And so what I've noticed is that the men who go and forgive their mothers, hey, I'm sorry for hating you, for turning me away from my father, and forgive the father for not protecting them from the mother, they tend to overcome that. And they have discernment. They see what's wrong, but they don't hate it. They deal with it, but they don't hate it. They discern it. Am I wrong in that?
Well, I disagree from the perspective that men don't have anger.
Well, they do have it, but they got it from their mother. You become like whomever you hate.
In some cases, undoubtedly, that is correct. But then you have some cases where certain behaviors are learned behaviors. There are some mothers are very passive, and then the father is very militant, very violent, and very abusive. And some men have picked up that behavior where they are very abusive, physically abusive to their own wife, but yet their mother, totally the opposite. So I guess it varies depending upon the parent. There are some men raised by, as you know, a single parent. And the mother has to take on the role of mother and father. So with many young men, as they begin to grow and enter their own, sometimes, sadly enough, they make the mistake of stepping to their mother like they're stepping to a man. And then the mother have to bring him back in check. And sometimes bringing him back in check is not being nice at all times, but being very disciplined and harsh if need be to put him back in his place.
But I've noticed that the men who are, as you said, abusive to their wives,
yes,
it's because they have married their mothers. Because you become like what you hate, you become subject to what you hate. And unless they overcome their mother, every woman they get involved with is their mothers. And just as they could not handle their mother, they can't handle their wives. And you know how deceitful women can be. They'll pretend to be innocent when they're really being abusive with the man, but they'll shed some tears and pretend that it's the man. And so those men who seem to be abusive are really dealing with abusive mama, and they can't deal with it. It's just the woman has a way of making herself look like a victim rather than the victimizer, and to make the man look bad. And so it's because he's married to his mama. But if he forgive his mother for hating her for what she's done, then God will forgive him and give him back his nature. He will return the man to the father. Then a woman can't manipulate like that.
Well, I agree, but I can't make a blanket statement and categorize all men to be in the same way. In my 37 years of pastoring and counseling and dealing with so many different situations, I've dealt with cases where young men, their behavior was very brutal, very violent, very mean. And as I began to further investigate into matters, it was behavior that they learned from their father and not their mother. Their mother was the victim of such physical brutality. So their sons, every relationship they got into, they started to do the same thing to women that they knew as their father done to their mother. Their mother was totally the opposite.
But and the reason the fathers are like that with their mothers, because those fathers have married their mothers, and it just goes on from generation to generation. And and the women are not honest. They're not going to tell you, you know what, son, your father loved you. He just couldn't handle me. I was so wicked and deceitful. He couldn't handle me, and I drove him to violence. And it was really me that caused that. And yes, the men are weak because they have not overcome the mothers, but it's the women who are driving the men. It's generation after generation keep repeating it because they keep marrying their mothers rather than overcoming their mothers, so they don't be attracted to that kind of a woman.
So if men that are in that predicament, you feel as though that any man that is in that predicament, that is his situation, that he's marrying his mother? Because I do agree that some men are what I call mama boys. They don't have the stability. They don't have the soundness. They don't have the discipline. So instead of looking for a strong woman, they look for someone to replace their mother or to fulfill that which they never had.
Every man that has anger is his mother. And there are some women who are more aggressive than others. No such thing as a strong woman, by the way. But there are some that are more aggressive than others. So there are some mothers who seem all meek and humble and nice. And there are those who are blatantly out of control. But the spirit is the same in them both. The nice one is just a little more cunning with her destruction. Whereas the loud one is more obvious with it. But it's the same spirit. Do you agree with me that women don't have love? Because these guys, because they hate their mothers, they're trying to get love from women, and women don't have love.
I don't indict or cannot indict every female and say they don't have love.
Have you ever met one that had love?
That have love?
Yes.
Oh, yes. My mother was a very loving woman.
But did she love her husband or her father?
Oh, yes.
If they grew up close to their fathers, then yes.
Yes, my mother loved her father dearly. My mother loved my father, which is her husband, dearly. And I don't say that just because it's my mother. I witnessed it. She lived it. My wife, a very loving woman. My wife loved her father. And my wife, and loving your father and loving your mother in a lot of ways teaches you how to love your husband and how to love your wife.